My name is Brianna Mercer, and I spent 32 years growing up in a deeply patriarchal family. 3 weeks ago, after our parents passed away, my brother forced me out of the house. He looked straight at me and said, "Dad decided long ago that sons inherit everything. Daughters get nothing. That's how it's always been in this family, and that's how it will remain." Then he changed the locks on the home where I was raised. The same house where I spent 2 full years caring for our dying mother, while he stopped by only 3 times. The house where I held her hand through chemotherapy as he checked his Rolex and complained about traffic. He threw my belongings onto the lawn and told me I was nothing but a burden, because in my father's view, that was all a daughter could ever be. What my brother didn't realize was that our mother had spent 8 years preparing for this exact situation. 8 years of quiet meetings with lawyers, 8 years building something he could not access. Before I explain what happened at the will reading, take a moment to like and subscribe if this story resonates with you. Let me know where you're watching from and the local time in the comments. Now, let me explain how a so-called worthless daughter ended up with everything. To understand Marcus's actions, you need to understand the Mercer family. My father, Robert Mercer, lived by one firm belief: sons carry the family name forward, while daughters marry and disappear into someone else's life. He wasn't openly cruel, he simply distributed his attention based on that belief. He was a contractor successful enough to buy a 4-bedroom colonial in a Connecticut suburb. Good schools, quiet streets, and a garage workshop where he spent weekends with Marcus, teaching him how to build, while I helped my mother in the kitchen. My mother, Linda, was the quiet anchor of the household. She maintained a lavender garden in the backyard every morning and had a way of softening my father's sharper judgments, making his dismissals feel less deliberate. Marcus, 6 years older than me, absorbed my father's worldview without question. When he graduated, Dad paid for his business degree at UConn. When Marcus wanted to move into real estate, Dad introduced him to every contractor and developer he knew. When I said I wanted to attend nursing school, Dad replied, "Girls don't need expensive educations. You'll get married anyway." I earned scholarships, worked double shifts at a diner, and paid my own way. 8 years ago, after another dinner, where Dad praised Marcus's first major sale and barely acknowledged my acceptance into the nursing program, my mother pulled me aside. "I've taken care of you," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "You won't understand now, but I have." At the time, I thought it was just something comforting a mother says. I didn't know she had spent that afternoon with a lawyer named Evelyn Cole, signing documents that would later change everything. 2 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I was halfway through a shift at Maplewood Senior Living when my phone buzzed with my father's name. He rarely called me, especially at work. "Your mother's sick," he said. "You need to come home." Not "we need you," just that it was my responsibility. I moved back within a week and switched to night shifts so I could be with Mom during the day. Chemotherapy appointments, radiation treatments, and the slow physical decline that cancer brings became our routine. My income dropped by 20%, but I didn't hesitate. She was my mother. Marcus visited 3 times in 2 years, 3 visits, each lasting under an hour. He would arrive in a Hugo Boss suit, kiss Mom's forehead, glance at his Rolex, and leave. His wife, Victoria, came once and spent most of the visit photographing the house for memories while barely acknowledging Mom. Dad never recognized what I was doing. In his mind, this was simply a daughter's role. But Mom noticed. She began meeting with someone once a month, saying it was for insurance paperwork. I drove her to an office in Hartford, waited in the car, and drove her home. She always seemed lighter afterward, as if she had set something heavy aside. One night, as I helped her into bed, she said, "You're a good girl, Brianna. Whatever happens, remember that you did everything right. You showed up. That matters more than people realize." I thought she was referring to the illness. She wasn't. Marcus and Victoria lived in Greenwich, in a 5-bedroom house in a neighborhood where even the mailboxes looked expensive. Victoria called herself a socialite, which appeared to mean attending gallery openings and posting photos of designer bags online. She looked at me as if I were invisible, background staff. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, the last one Mom was healthy enough to host, Victoria asked, Have you ever considered something with more upward mobility? You can't clean up after old people forever. My mother's grip tightened on her fork. I'm a registered nurse, I said calmly. I help people. Victoria laughed politely, dismissively. Later that night, I went to the kitchen for water and overheard Marcus and Victoria talking in the hallway. Don't worry about her, Marcus said. Dad promised everything to me years ago. She's not getting anything. She's just here to play nurse until Mom's gone. Good, Victoria replied quietly. We need this. We really need this. I stood still behind the door, realizing something was wrong. The desperation in her voice didn't match their polished lifestyle. 6 weeks ago, my mother was declared cancer-free. I cried in the oncologist's office. After 2 years of fear, she had survived. We celebrated with lunch at her favorite cafe, where she ordered her first glass of champagne since her diagnosis. She said she wanted to visit her own mother, Grandma Eleanor, at her assisted living facility. Dad had promised to take her for months. 4 weeks ago, they finally went. They never returned. A truck driver fell asleep on I-95. The police said it was instant and that they didn't suffer. I was working the night shift when I got the call. I remember sitting on cold concrete steps in a stairwell, unable to breathe, the phone on the floor as the state police asked if I was still there. I don't remember the drive home, only the smell of Mom's lavender garden when I arrived at 3 a.m. and the realization that she would never tend it again. The funeral was 4 days later at St. Andrew's Episcopal, where my parents had married. About 80 people attended. Marcus gave the eulogy, speaking about Dad for 7 minutes and mentioning Mom twice. Before the reception ended, while I was still receiving condolences, Marcus pulled me aside to talk about the house. With the funeral flowers still fresh, he told me I needed to clear out by the end of the week. The house is mine, he said quietly. Dad made that clear. I reminded him the will hadn't been read yet. He said it was just a formality and told me I should be grateful for the week. He explained that caring for Mom had been my choice, not his responsibility, and that I could have pursued a real life instead of nursing. When I reminded him I had cared for her for 2 years, he replied that he had been busy building something meaningful. Don't compare nursing to running a business, he said. We both know what you are. He gave me 1 week. He didn't wait that long. 2 days after the funeral, I returned home from work to find my key no longer worked. The locks had been changed. My belongings were boxed up in the garage, soaked from the rain. My nursing diploma was warped. Through the window, I saw Victoria inside, wine glass in hand. She noticed me, smiled, raised her glass slightly, and walked away. When I called Marcus, he told me the house was legally his and gave me 24 hours to remove my things before he had them discarded. I ended the call and sat on the wet grass, holding the only undamaged item I had left, my mother's Timex watch, safely tucked in my pocket since the hospital returned her belongings. That's when I found the letter. It was inside a box of my mother's belongings, things Marcus clearly assumed were worthless. Her gardening gloves, a few old photographs, and a cream-colored envelope with my name written in her handwriting. For Brianna, when the time comes. I didn't open it there on the lawn. I couldn't. Instead, I called the only person who came to mind, Diane Foster, the head nurse at Maplewood and a mentor to me for the past 3 years. She arrived in her Honda Odyssey within half an hour. Get in, she said, without asking anything. You're staying with me tonight, tomorrow, and as long as you need. Her apartment was small, 2 bedrooms in a Hartford complex that had clearly aged, but it was warm and dry. When she handed me a cup of tea and a blanket, I finally let myself cry. Later, once I could breathe again, I opened my mother's letter. Her handwriting was unsteady. She must have written it during chemotherapy, when her hands trembled constantly. My darling Brianna, it began. If you're reading this, then what I feared has happened. Your father and your brother have shown you exactly who they are. I want you to know that I saw it. I always did. I couldn't change your father, God knows I tried, but I could protect you. Contact Evelyn Cole at Harrison & Cole in Hartford. She has everything you need. All the papers, all the arrangements, everything I couldn't give you while I was alive. You are not a burden. You never were. You are the best thing I ever did. I love you more than lavender and sunshine and every good thing. Mom? I read it 3 times before it fully sank in. Then I called the number she had written at the bottom. Harrison and Cole occupied a brownstone in downtown Hartford, the kind of old money building with brass nameplates and creaking hardwood floors. I felt underdressed in my clean scrubs, but Evelyn Cole's assistant simply smiled and led me to a corner office lined with law books and softened by afternoon light. Evelyn was not what I expected. Late 50s, silver hair pulled into an elegant twist, wearing a charcoal Armani suit, but her eyes were warm when she shook my hand. "Brianna," she said, "I've been waiting for your call. Your mother spoke about you often." That almost broke me. I told her about the letter and asked about the papers. She nodded. "We worked together for 8 years. Your mother was one of the most deliberate people I've ever represented." 8 years. The same time frame as the night my mother had whispered to me after my nursing school acceptance. Evelyn explained that my mother knew my father's intentions and understood that Marcus would inherit everything Robert controlled. She couldn't change that, but she could plan around it. When I asked what that meant, Evelyn said calmly that my mother had made arrangements completely outside my father's estate, arrangements Marcus didn't know about, and my father never knew about either. She told me both wills would be read together the following week and asked me to trust her until then. No matter what Marcus said or threatened, she told me not to react, not to sign anything, and to wait. When I asked why, she smiled gently. "Because your mother is about to have the final word." 3 days before the will reading, Marcus called. It was 10 p.m., and I was sitting in Diane's dim kitchen, trying unsuccessfully to read. Seeing his name on my phone made my stomach tighten. His voice was friendly, which felt worse than anger. He said he'd been thinking and didn't like how things were between us. I reminded him that he had thrown me out 2 days after our parents' funeral. He sounded almost apologetic and said he wanted to fix things. He explained he had drawn up a simple agreement. I would waive any right to contest the estate, and he would give me $10,000 in cash to help me get settled. $10,000 for a lifetime of being told I was lesser, for 2 years of caring for our mother while he barely showed up. When I said no, he told me to be realistic, insisted I would gain nothing in probate, and warned that I'd only waste time and money. I told him I'd see him at the will reading. His tone turned sharp immediately. He said I was making a mistake and would walk away with nothing. I told him that was my decision. He ended the call by saying he had tried to be generous and that whatever came next would be my responsibility. I put the phone down with shaking hands and did exactly what Evelyn told me to do. I waited. I want to pause here and ask something. Have you ever been pressured by family to sign something or told you had no right to ask for what's fair? That feeling stays with you. If this sounds familiar, leave a comment. I read every one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Because what happened at the will reading changed everything. The will reading took place at 2 p.m. on a Thursday at Harrison and Cole. The conference room had a long mahogany table meant for 12, though only 6 of us were present. Marcus, Victoria, me, Evelyn Cole, her assistant as witness, and, to Marcus's clear surprise, my grandmother, Eleanor. His smile faltered when she entered. Eleanor Whitfield was 82 and sharper than most people half her age, wearing a navy dress and the sapphire ring she had always worn. She sat beside me and said simply that her daughter had asked her to be there. Marcus recovered quickly and said Dad's wishes were clear. Evelyn calmly noted that 2 wills would be read that day, Robert Mercer's and Linda Mercer's, separate documents with separate provisions. Victoria frowned, questioning why that mattered if everything had been jointly owned. Evelyn replied evenly that not everything was. Evelyn began with my father's will. It was exactly what Marcus expected. After the formalities, she read the distribution. 70% of my father's personal assets to Marcus, including vehicles, tools, and joint accounts. Then 30% of the remaining personal assets to me. Marcus smirked, calculating aloud how little that would amount to after expenses, and said I should be grateful. My grandmother quietly suggested he let the lawyer finish. Marcus leaned back confidently, stating that the house and real money were his, and that I was getting more than expected. Victoria pulled out her phone, already disengaged. Evelyn then stated that Robert's will covered only part of the estate. Marcus questioned what she meant. She opened the second folder and explained that my mother's estate was separate and significantly larger. The room went silent. Marcus insisted my mother had no estate of her own and stood up, declaring that nothing Evelyn read would change his father's long-standing wishes. He turned to me, mocking the idea my mother could have left me anything meaningful. He claimed I had no home, no support, nothing to fall back on. That was when Evelyn firmly told him to sit down. To everyone's surprise, he did. She then continued, calmly explaining that his opinions about inheritance did not alter the legal reality of what my mother had arranged. But this is a legal proceeding, not a family argument. Your mother's will contains specific provisions that override your assumptions. If you interrupt again, you will be asked to leave and receive the information in writing. Victoria grabbed Marcus's arm, whispering something urgent. He leaned back, jaw tight. Evelyn picked up the second folder. And now, she said, we address the matter of Linda Mercer's estate, including the final section your mother specifically requested I read aloud. For a moment, doubt crept in. Marcus's words echoed in my mind. Mom was a housewife. Everything she had came from Dad. What if he was right? What if the letter, the lawyer, the promises, what if it was all just a mother trying to comfort a daughter she thought would be left behind? I glanced at the Timex watch on my wrist. Mom's watch. The leather cracked, the face scratched. She could have worn something nicer, but she had worn this every day until the end. What had she truly left me? Victoria whispered to Marcus, nails tapping the table. Probably just some life insurance or something. A few thousand. Nothing that changes our situation. Our situation? The phrase caught my attention. Grandma's hand was still in mine beneath the table, squeezing firmly as if sensing my wavering. Brianna, she murmured, so quietly only I could hear. Your mother was the smartest woman I ever raised. Trust her. I looked at Evelyn, who regarded me with patient, almost anticipatory eyes. I'm ready, I said. Marcus snorted. Ready for disappointment. Victoria laughed. Evelyn ignored them both, opening the folder and removing several documents stamped with notarizations and official seals. Last will and testament of Linda Eleanor Mercer, she began. Updated 18 months ago, witnessed by myself and a notary public of Hartford County. The testator was evaluated by Dr. Sarah Hammond, a board-certified psychiatrist, and declared fully competent to execute this document. She looked directly at Marcus. The first item is a letter Mrs. Mercer requested I read aloud. Marcus stiffened. 18 months ago. Mom had been mid-chemo. His concern was expected. Which is why I have Dr. Hammond's written evaluation confirming your mother's full cognitive capacity at the time, Evelyn replied evenly. I also have video documentation of the signing. Your mother wanted no ambiguity. The video is 32 minutes long and available if anyone wishes to contest her competency. Victoria's phone had stopped moving. She stared at the USB drive like it might bite her. Marcus swallowed hard. Now the letter, Evelyn said, lifting a single handwritten page on cream stationery. I recognized it immediately. Mom had used this paper for important correspondence. To my children, Evelyn read, voice measured. If you are hearing this letter, then I am gone, and the moment I dreaded has arrived. I love you both, and I want you to know that first. But love does not make me blind. Marcus went still. For 35 years, I watched your father favor Marcus in ways he didn't even recognize as favoritism. Sons matter. Daughters serve. I could not change him. Believe me, I tried. There is more. Evelyn paused. Marcus's jaw tightened. Evelyn continued. When Brianna was born, Robert said, maybe next time we'll have another boy. I held my daughter and promised she would never be next time. I watched her grow up working twice as hard for half the acknowledgement, paying her way through nursing school while Marcus received every advantage. I watched her come home to care for me during the worst 2 years of my life, changing sheets, holding my hand through chemotherapy, singing the songs I had sung to her as a baby. Marcus visited 3 times in 2 years. I do not write this to condemn my son, but to explain my choices. The assets I leave to Brianna are not a reward, not favoritism. They are the balance she was always owed. Victoria made a small strangled sound. If Marcus feels anger, I understand, but ask yourself, why do you feel entitled to everything? Who taught you that? And what did you do to earn it other than being born male? Marcus's face went pale. Evelyn read the final lines. Brianna, my darling girl, you are never a burden. You are my heart. Live well, be happy, and never let anyone tell you that you don't deserve every good thing. With all my love forever, Mom. The room fell silent. I couldn't speak. Grandma pressed a tissue into my hand. Evelyn continued quietly, let's discuss what your mother actually left you. First, the house. Marcus straightened. The house is part of Dad's estate, always in his name. Actually, it wasn't, Evelyn said, sliding a document across the table. 5 years ago, your parents executed a deed transfer. The property at 127 Maple Drive was transferred from joint ownership to Linda Mercer's sole name. Marcus grabbed the paper, scanning frantically. Why would Dad agree to that? For liability protection, Evelyn replied. Your father faced a potential lawsuit from a dissatisfied client. Moving the house into your mother's name protected it from legal judgments. It's a common estate planning strategy. The lawsuit was settled out of court, but the deed transfer remained. She produced another document, the recorded deed from Hartford County Land Records. The property, currently valued at about $650,000, belongs solely to Mom. Victoria's face had gone pale. So she could leave it to whoever she chose? Evelyn looked at me. And she chose me? I asked. No, Marcus said. This has to be a mistake. Dad said, your father believed what he wanted to believe, Grandma said sharply. Linda told him the deed transfer was temporary for the lawsuit. She never reversed it, and he never checked. I stared at the deed, Mom's signature neat and deliberate. The house where I grew up, where I cared for her, where Marcus had thrown me out. It was mine. It had always been mine. Evelyn continued, unfazed. There is also an irrevocable trust. The what? Marcus looked stunned. 8 years ago, your mother established an irrevocable trust with Brianna as sole beneficiary. Once created, it cannot be altered or dissolved without the beneficiary's consent. It exists entirely outside probate. Marcus turned to Grandma. You gave her the money? I gave my daughter money that was mine to give, Grandma replied calmly. What she did with it was her business. Evelyn confirmed. The trust was funded with a $400,000 gift from Mrs. Whitfield, invested conservatively over 8 years. Current value, approximately $1.2 million. Victoria made a sound as if struck. Marcus repeated the number slowly. That is correct. The trust was irrevocable, funded with separate property, and never part of your parents' joint estate. It has always belonged to Brianna. I could hardly process it. $1.2 million. My mother, quiet, modest, Timex-wearing, had built me a fortune while I thought I was struggling. This is fraud, Marcus sputtered. Your father's knowledge is irrelevant, Evelyn said calmly. The trust was legally established with funds that were never his. He had no claim, and neither do you. The USB drive sat untouched on the table. 32 minutes of Mom explaining every decision. One final asset, Evelyn continued. Marcus looked as if he might be sick. Victoria's grip on his arm was white-knuckled. Your mother held a life insurance policy with Northwestern Mutual valued at $500,000. The beneficiary is, she paused for effect, Brianna Lynn Mercer, solely. Mom had life insurance. I hadn't known. She purchased it 12 years ago, paying premiums from her personal account using my grandmother's gifts. My father was never named. But I'm her son, Marcus said, voice cracking with desperation. I'm her firstborn. She can't just leave me nothing. She can't. She didn't leave you nothing, Mr. Mercer, Evelyn replied calmly, pulling out a final page. Your mother's will specifies that you receive her personal effects, photograph albums, her jewelry collection, and a letter she wrote specifically for you. A letter? Marcus laughed hollowly. She leaves Brianna millions, and I get a letter? And the jewelry contains meaningful pieces, Evelyn offered. I don't want her jewelry, he snapped, slamming his palm on the table. I want what I was promised. I want what I earned. What you earned, I spoke quietly but firmly, filling the room. You visited Mom 3 times in 2 years, 3 times. You told me I was a burden while I held her hand through chemotherapy. What exactly did you earn? Marcus stared at me, and I met his gaze without flinching. Evelyn intervened. Let's discuss the total figures. There was the faintest trace of satisfaction in her professional tone. This is contested, Marcus said, standing so abruptly his chair nearly toppled. I'm contesting all of it. Mom wasn't in her right mind. Chemo, medication. She couldn't have made these decisions rationally. Evelyn remained seated. As I mentioned, your mother underwent a cognitive evaluation by Dr. Sarah Hammond, a board-certified psychiatrist, unaffiliated with her medical treatment. The evaluation concluded Mrs. Mercer was fully competent and understood the consequences of her decisions. Psychiatrists can be wrong, of course, but the signing of her will was also recorded on video. She tapped the USB drive. In it, your mother clearly articulates her reasons for each bequest. She also addresses the possibility you might contest and explains why such a contest would fail. Furthermore, the irrevocable trust and life insurance designations bypass probate entirely. You have no standing to challenge them. There has to be something, Marcus muttered. If you wish to contest your father's will, you may, though I advise consulting counsel about costs versus potential recovery. Your mother's arrangements, however, were made over 8 years to be ironclad. Grandma Eleanor spoke up. My daughter didn't do this out of spite, Marcus. She did it because she knew. Without protection, Brianna would have received nothing. She deserved better. Marcus turned to Grandma, fury contorting his face. You helped her hide this. You helped her cut me out. I helped her protect her daughter, Grandma said simply. The same thing any mother would do. Marcus had no reply. Victoria was the first to break. This is insane. She's a nurse. She wipes old people's behinds for a living, and she gets $2 million while you what? Mrs. Mercer, Evelyn asked calmly, you've said enough. Well, you're about to lose your house in Greenwich, Grandma said quietly, slicing through the tension. Did you think we didn't know about Marcus's failed investments? The $400,000 loss? The foreclosure notices? Marcus went white. How do you? Linda knew? Of course, Grandma said. She knew about the debts, the bad deals, the desperation. She knew you were counting on this inheritance. That's why she made sure you couldn't touch what she built for Brianna. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and for the first time in years, saw him clearly. The Rolex, the Hugo Boss suit, the BMW in the parking lot, it was all scaffolding, a facade built on credit, promises, and the assumption that our parents' money would always catch him. You were planning to take everything, I said slowly. Not because you needed it, but because you were drowning. I'm not drowning, he snapped. I had a setback, that's all. A temporary setback that Dad's estate would have covered, except the estate wasn't what you thought it was. Victoria sank into her chair, mascara smudging. You spent your whole life believing you deserved everything, I continued, and you never stopped to wonder if that was true. Marcus didn't respond. Evelyn waited until the room was quiet, then summarized the total assets passing to me. Mother's estate, 127 Maple Drive property, estimated $650,000, irrevocable trust. 2018, $1,200,000. Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance, $500,000. Father's estate, 30% of remaining liquid assets, roughly $24,000. Total, approximately $2.374 million. The number hung in the air. My mother, who grew her own vegetables, wore a Timex, and bought only what she needed, had left me nearly $2.5 million. Marcus made a strangled sound, gripping the table so hard his knuckles turned white. He tried to stand, then his eyes rolled back and he crumpled. Victoria screamed. Evelyn's assistant called 911 and checked his pulse. He was breathing, pulses steady, probably just fainted from shock. Grandma squeezed my hand. Your mother would be proud, she whispered. Not for the money, for who you've become despite it all. Paramedics later confirmed it was syncope, a sudden drop in blood pressure triggered by shock. Minor injury, nothing dangerous. 20 minutes later, Marcus was back in his chair, pale and unsteady, Victoria hovering. He looked at me, voice hoarse. You knew about all of this. I didn't, I said firmly. Not until a few days ago, and even then, I didn't know how much. But you suspected. You sat here, looking innocent, and you suspected. I knew Mom loved me. That's all I knew for certain. His laugh was bitter, broken. And I didn't. She didn't love me. I think she loved you, I said slowly. I think she loved who you could have been, but she also saw who you chose to become. Victoria tightened her grip on his shoulder. We should go, she said. Figure out what? Marcus's voice cracked. How to pay our mortgage? How to tell the bank we're not getting anything? Brianna, you have to help me. We're family. Family, I said, my voice steady. 3 visits in 2 years. Dead to you. Wait, enjoy being homeless? Marcus, you kicked me out of my own home before Mom's flowers had wilted. You told me I was a burden. You tried to make me sign away everything for $10,000. I was stressed. Investments, pressure. I didn't mean half of what I said. That's not who I am. Then who are you, Marcus? I asked quietly, because I've known you for 28 years and I've never seen evidence of anyone different. I'm not going to let my brother become homeless, I said. I'm not cruel, but I won't bail you out of the choices you made while treating me like I was worthless. So what then? You walk away with millions and I get nothing? You get exactly what you earned. I picked up my worn leather bag, the same I carried through nursing school, through 2 years of night shifts, through every dismissal. You face the consequences of your choices, the same way I finally faced the consequences of mine. Victoria started to speak, but I held up my hand. If you need to contact me, go through Evelyn. Any personal relationship? I look at my brother, this man I grew up with, who held my hand on the first day of school and now barely recognize. That's going to take time, a lot of time, and honestly, I don't know if we'll ever get there. Brianna, I'm not doing this to hurt you. My voice was steady. I'm doing it because I finally understand something Mom tried to teach me. I don't have to accept treatment I wouldn't give someone else. I walked toward the door. Mom loved you, I said over my shoulder, but she loved me enough to protect me from you. That's the difference. I didn't wait for him to respond. Grandma followed me into the hallway. Wait, she said, catching my arm. I have something for you. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box, navy blue, worn soft at the corners. Your mother wanted you to have this, she said. Inside was her sapphire ring, the one Grandma had worn as long as I could remember, the one I had admired as a child. Grandma, I can't. This is yours. It was mine, she corrected gently. I gave it to your mother on her wedding day, and she gave it back when she knew she was dying, so I could give it to you when the time was right. I slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. There's something else you should know, Grandma said, her voice soft. Something even your mother didn't put in the will. I looked up. Linda wanted to leave your father years ago, before you were born. But then she got pregnant with Marcus and stayed, for you kids. No one knew. She made the best of it, but she always regretted that she couldn't give you a different childhood. Grandma's eyes glistened with unshed tears. The trust, the insurance, all of it. Her way of giving you the freedom she never had. The freedom to walk away from people who don't value you. I hugged her tightly. This tiny woman had helped my mother plan for 8 years to give me a future. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, she said. Just live well. That's all your mother ever wanted. Behind us, I heard Marcus and Victoria leaving, voices low and strained. I didn't look back. 1 month later, I sat in the office of a financial advisor in Hartford, recommended by Evelyn, a woman with 20 years of experience and no interest in taking advantage of my inexperience. Here's my recommendation, she said, sliding a document across the desk. Keep the trust invested. Draw only what you need for living expenses. Put the life insurance into a high-yield savings account for emergencies or opportunities. Pay off your student loans, about $42,000, and keep working. Keep working? I asked, expecting her to suggest I retire, travel, or do something extravagant. You love your job, she said simply. Money shouldn't change who you are. It should just give you options. So that's what I did. I paid off my loans, a debt I'd been chipping away at for 6 years, in a single transaction. I kept my position at Maplewood but switched to day shifts since I no longer needed the night differential. I stayed with Diane for another month while deciding what to do about the house. The house was complicated. It was where I had cared for Mom, where I'd been thrown out, where Marcus and Victoria drank wine as my belongings soaked in the rain. It was also where Mom had grown her lavender garden, tucked me in at night, and quietly built a future I never knew existed. I wasn't ready to live there. Not yet. But I wasn't ready to sell it either. Rent it, Diane suggested. Let it pay for itself while you figure things out. There's no rush. She was right. For the first time in my life, there was no rush. Mom had given me that. 3 months after the will reading, Grandma called with news. Marcus had to sell the Greenwich house. Victoria filed for divorce last week, she said. I was at work on my break, sitting in the same stairwell where I learned our parents were dead. Strange how places collect memories. How do you know? I asked. His listing showed up on Zillow, and Victoria's Instagram is very forthcoming. She's already rebranding herself as a survivor of narcissistic financial abuse, Grandma said dryly. Is he okay? Define okay, she replied. He's living in an apartment in Bridgeport, still working in real estate, but not at his old firm. I don't think anyone's inviting him to Greenwich cocktail parties anymore. The old version of me might have felt satisfaction. The new me, having processed, grieved, and healed, felt only tired. I don't wish him harm, I said. I know you don't. That's the difference between you and him. Did Mom know about the debts and financial trouble? I asked. She suspected, Grandma said. That's partly why she acted. If money were available, Marcus would have found a way to take it. Not because he's evil, but because he was raised to believe he was owed it. I pictured my brother alone in his apartment, the boy who once chased me around the backyard, who let me ride on his shoulders at parades. That boy was gone, and I couldn't save him. I'm going to the house this weekend, I told Grandma. Do you want company? Yes, I think I do. The lavender garden had survived the winter, not entirely. Some plants were brown and brittle, but in the early April sunlight, new green shoots pushed through the soil. Life. Stubborn, persistent, refusing to give up. Grandma linked her arm with mine. She planted this garden the year you were born, she said. I hadn't known. I assumed it was just something Mom enjoyed. Lavender is for protection, for purification. She wanted good things to grow around you. I entered the back door. My key worked perfectly. The kitchen smelled faintly of tea and memories. Mom's things remained. Recipe cards, reading glasses, her robe. I went to her bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. On the nightstand was a small album I'd never seen. Photographs from infancy to adulthood. First steps, first day of school, nursing graduation. On the first page in Mom's careful handwriting, for my bravest girl. Grandma sat beside me. She'd spent weeks assembling it during chemo, counting the good things. I held the album to my chest and finally let myself cry. Not grief this time, gratitude. 6 months later, I enrolled in a nurse practitioner program. Expensive, yes, but now possible with money from the trust, following the advisor's plan. Tuition and books were covered, with the remainder continuing to grow quietly. I kept working part-time at Maplewood, not ready to leave my patients. Diane and I found an apartment nearby. 2 bedrooms, a tiny balcony where I started growing lavender. Grandma called every Sunday, telling stories about Mom as a child, about their adventures and the woman she was before life wore her down. I recorded the calls, building an archive of the mother I was still discovering and the house on Maple Drive. I rented the house to a young nurse and her family. The older daughter asked to care for the lavender garden. I said yes. I said yes to opportunities, to rest, to understanding that I was worth more than I had been told. Mom didn't just give me money. She gave me permission to believe I deserved it. I've thought about why Marcus became who he is, not to excuse him, but to understand. He was told he was special simply because he was male. He didn't have to prove anything. The world was his by default. He never learned empathy, the effort required to earn, or the value of others' needs. Psychologists call it entitlement, the belief you deserve things without effort. It's taught, and once learned, it's almost impossible to unlearn because admitting otherwise challenges one's entire identity. Marcus isn't a monster. He's the product of a system that convinced him he was worth more than he really was. And when reality finally caught up, he didn't know how to handle it. I don't know if he'll ever change. I hope he does. But his change isn't my responsibility. My responsibility is to myself. To live the life Mom wanted for me, to set boundaries that protect my peace, and to remember that walking away from toxic people isn't cruelty, it's survival. If you're watching this and have been told you're not enough, by family, by partners, by anyone who should have loved you, I want you to know they were wrong. You were always enough. Sometimes the people who love us protect us in ways we don't realize. And sometimes we have to become our own protectors. That's what I learned from my mother. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Share about someone who protected you, or someone you wish had. And if you want more stories like this, check the links in the description. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know.